Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Marc Gray on the Project Camelot TV, and I'm welcoming today two ladies, not this far from each other, but a little bit or further away. I'm based in Normandy, and Lauda Leon is with us tonight, and she's in BC near Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. And I have also a returning guest, Eve Lorgen, whom I had on a few months ago. We had some technical glitches, and I'm going to try to get this show going a little smoother than last time. With Eve Lorgen, she's from in Asheville, North Carolina, correct? And of course, those two ladies have worked together with various clients, and that's why I have them on, both of them today, because they're going to talk to us about anomalous trauma. They're actually experts in their field of anomalous trauma healing, and Lauda will talk to us about her personal experiences with anomalous trauma and her solutions and healing solutions and methods. And Eve will also talk to us about her latest discoveries, findings, research, and everything else. We'll try to get all those topics covered with quantum methods, forensic profiling, and interference patterns that we have identified with Eve last time. But we'll go a little further deep into the field today. Welcome, ladies. Who wants to start first, introducing yourself?
Well, I can go first. This is Eve Lorgen, and I was on the show actually a couple months ago, and as Marc said, there was a bit of interference, and I was somewhat disappointed because there was a lot that I had wanted to say, and there was a lot of blank spots. So we'll hope that won't happen this time, and have a chance to speak at more length and how it corresponds with Lauda Leon's work and both of our experiences and how we met, because both of our work is very similar. And we've also had similar experiences that we've shared together that relate to alien abductions and milabs and anomalous trauma, interference and hyperdimensional interference. So Lauda has also taken part in our web panel that we did together on the Love Bite Plus, as well as the hyperdimensional interference. And she has a lot of YouTube of her own, her videos out that relate to a lot. Actually, it's much more, and I don't know if we'll be able to cover as much as we'd like, but I just wanted to say who I am, and I wrote two books. The first one's called The Love Bite: Alien Interference in Human Love Relationships. And the second one is called The Dark Side of Cupid, about supernatural energy vampirism relationship dynamics, really, which has a lot to do with hyperdimensional interference factors. That's what a lot of my clients come to me for, is some of the more high strangeness that happens that can't be explained. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Lauda so she can just go ahead and introduce herself, and we'll just go from there.
Thank you, Eve. It's your turn, Lauda.
Thanks, Marc. My name is Lauda Leon, and some people do call me the Spirit Whisperer because I do have clairvoyant capabilities, various different types of quantum healing modalities that I utilize using the spirit-to-spirit communication. I am a forensic anomalous profiler, and the interesting and profoundly fascinating thing about that is that it incorporates a little bit of everything, because we go into the actual setup of the person and we determine what is operating in their lives on multiple levels, not just in the 3D, but in the interdimensional, hyperdimensional, and we determine points of entry, breaches, where events occur that allow a lot of interaction between things that exist in other realms and other densities and other dimensions that are constantly in communication with with our realm. So Eve and I have done quite a lot of work together, and constantly excavating other people's experiences to give and lend a deeper understanding about what is really happening so that people can take their power back. A lot of my experiences have a lot to do with understanding and being shown and understanding the quantum nature of reality and how we can take keys to take back our power, authority, and sovereignty. So the work is based on giving people back their true source being of power, and then oftentimes memories open up as we excavate through. So
you've had some anomalous experiences, contact experiences with ET beings, with some extraterrestrials, or
oh yes,
interdimensional entities.
Probably all of the above. Ever since very beginning.
Were you in my lab as well, or?
Yeah. Actually, it was orchestrated. I was born in Spain, but the projects that were going on, the Black projects, they needed me to be at the at the southern part of Ontario because there's a deep affiliation with the Black projects there and the US. And so they orchestrated my family to be moved from Spain to that location, and mostly it was because of the projects. So yeah, but it was a lot of abductions from the beginning, a lot of visitations, a lot of experiences in the phenomenon of the supernatural as well. So, and my parents were witnesses to much of this as well. It was many of the things that we experienced were the setup was within the family, but there's always a prime. So even though the setup is the family and they follow the family through generations and they follow the lineages, there's always a prime in each one that they target.
Can you talk about the prime, like what you mean by the prime, because that's actually really important.
Yeah, and it's actually their terminology, because the prime means that there's the key holder of the blood gifts. So all of your abilities that you have that are in your DNA, and the majority of them are inaccessible on this frontline personality reality, but they're able to harness it. So the primes are the one with the deepest amount of power that have retained the purest amount of the lineage DNA in origin of that power. So that's why they call them the primes. So usually in every family there's one prime.
So yeah, so you talk about lineage. It's always a transgenerational, right? And the context, the anomalous experiences.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean that works itself out too with alien abductees who are multi-generational in their families, where maybe one of the parents is taken, but not all of the children. Maybe it's one of three or two of three, or they'll take the cousin, but it's not all of them. Sometimes it's just a particular one or two.
Exactly. And they know this. They know this upon entry. So as soon as they don't even have to wait for the child to be born, because they know it upon inception in the uterus. So they know what they're dealing with, and they know who the primes are, and then the setups begin, right? And so they've tracked this. They have this technology that they've been using for, thousands of years, and then they sold it to the governments and the projects in exchange for technology.
Right. So this collusion between governments is important. With some alien beings, what factions of extraterrestrials would you say, or have you encountered are colluding with the government, with the shadow government, actually?
In my experience, there's many, actually, many. The question I was asking, who wasn't?
Oh.
Which one actually weren't, because my experience is that from meeting and interacting, a lot of the the reptilians were involved in the shadow government. The Greys are involved in the various different kinds of Greys, by the way. There was like the really tall ones that are almost like a blue, and they have a long neck, and they have I think they're related to the ancient Egyptian gods. So they're working with the government as well. I think the Pleiadians are working with the government. In my experience, the Lyrians were always in the position of warning or trying to warn, to try and have some kind of working with the government to counter all of these, these interactions and these alliances that have been going on. I had experiences where I was in meetings discussing all of this, because the problem was that they were making contracts with not almost all of them that were coming in. So only few of them were representing the Universal Council. And as far as the Universal Council is concerned, they don't want to make alliances like that with the government for exchange for anything. Because
so what's the Universal Council made of?
Well, the Universal Council, in my experience growing up, is made out of many beings from all over the universe, who essentially are trying to help in a way that doesn't interfere with people's personal evolution. And they don't, there is a code by which they have to go by, which means that it's a non-interference code. But at the same time, they're trying to stop a lot of these beings from all over the, other galaxies to come in and start allying for product, meaning us, product, payload, resources, which is us. And these alliances are abhorrent to the Universal Council, because it is a black market.
So it's a big farm. It's a gigantic human farm.
Yeah.
And we're being harvested for our energy, or meat, flesh and blood, or emotions, or souls.
Emotions, psychic ability, gifts, God codes, you name it, depending on who wants to buy what, right? A lot of these alliances, I mean, if you're going to be exchanging people for technology, which is what they've done here, it tells you, and it's an indicator of what's really operating. And the fact that the governments chose to ally with that and not a benevolent non-interference, because they had nothing to gain. They weren't going to offer them any technology, because they knew that they would use it for power, not the kind of power that's good, the kind of power that would keep people enslaved. So, the Universal Council had no desire to play on that medium, but everybody else, they were in on it. They were like, sure, we'll give you this technology. You give us, these amount of people.
They must have access to limited technology. Otherwise, they would be gone for a long time. Well, although they may have colonies in other dimensions, or have open portals. When we talk about burns.
Oh yeah.
And
but they would never give us what they really have that they're using. They give us, their ancient version technology, but for, to them, to what we've known here, it's a lot. So what they could give us, which is Tinker Toys for them, for us is a lot. Right,
exactly. But this dimension, who holds basically who has the wheel basically in this dimension, onto the human race and species, and let's go back to our genesis. What did you learn? And Eve, maybe you have some testimonies through the archetypes that your experiencers have come up with.
Well, I mean, there's many different beings that they report in terms of the forms they're taking, and that's a big point of confusion and complexity, I think, in the UFO community, where there's so much discussion on which ET and what their agenda is, and then getting kind of caught up in the distractions of the multiplicity of how they're playing out, the good guy or the good cop, bad cop situation. But I like to try to simplify things from a perspective of identifying, how is their behavior and interaction manifesting in their lives, and is there this primary focus of a lot of drama, chaos, trauma, and what I call energy vampirism happening, as well as control mechanisms or evidence of some form of mind control or spiritual manipulation. And then if we see that, then we know that the players are most likely the ones that are wanting to harvest us for their own use, like a parasitism kind of situation. So there's a lot of different beings involved. So what's helped me actually understand this, and I'll work with clients as well, is understanding some of Dr. Corrado Malanga's ways of seeing the hierarchy of aliens and how they played themselves out between corporeal versus incorporeal, and how they parasite and why they parasite, and the hierarchy. And then also combining this with my understanding of the ancient Gnostic understanding of the demiurge and the archons and how they played their manipulation games, and then compare with the similar dynamics. And so now my focus is not so much getting caught up within the different bells and whistles that are happening with the alien contact groups, and which groups are good and this and that, but more how can we take back our own power and identify what's going on inside of us. Because if we can reconnect with our own authentic spirit memory, our memory of our true essence of being, which is eternal, then all those other questions will be answered, and those other things that are false will tend to fall away. And it will actually simplify our lives and make things much more easy to deal with. But there is the interference factor, which is probably one of the first things that I discovered in my work with alien abductions. I never really expected to run into it the way that I did, and it was almost accidental how I came across, for example, the love bite and the drama of the love obsession, and what I called the truth detracting characteristics and the targeting interdimensional interference when people started to go deeper into their experience to get memories or do therapy or regressions or go to a support group or go to UFO conferences or do radio interviews. Then the interference would begin, and it would play out in many different ways, which we identified as much more invasive and subtle than what we'd have thought. And that includes the dream hacking, the telepathic stuff. And so this is the kind of thing that we discussed in our support groups many years ago when James Bartley and I were both doing one in San Diego County. And we came across many of the military abduction elements that involve military and reptilians and aliens working in conjunction with one another, and the kinds of games and dream hacks and the what I call the operations and the ops that would be taking place, that people would wake up and they would remember mutually shared experiences, but they remembered them as dreams, but you'd wake up with marks and alleged physical evidence and mutual memories with other people who were involved in the same operation. So it really led to the question of there's certainly a high technology going on here with what they're really doing with us. And this isn't just simple alien abduction and hybrid studies and the whole thing that they were trying to portray at the time of what's going on with the ETs. It definitely involves military and shadow government and secret cult groups, and there is an agenda, and it's very spiritual as well. So I don't know if I got off track there, but I wanted to simplify why I went in the direction that I did instead of getting kind of caught up on which alien is which and what they do and why they did it and, who has evidence. There's so much going on that it's something that Barbara Bartholick told me. She said, pretty much everybody is really being abducted in some way in terms of manipulation. That this is really not limited to, quote, the alien abductees or the contactees or even certain bloodlines. This is actually, the whole planet is under this kind of influence, whether they think they are or not. And I think that the ones who are having the more significant abductions are the milabs, where they're really targeted and they're very aware and they have supernatural abilities, or they have that X factor or the metagene, then they're the ones that they have to exploit and try to control even more, because they're the ones who tend to have more awareness and more abilities. So they really put the clamp on those people even more, whereas the ones who are not as aware, well, they're easier to control. You don't have to really deal with them. So they don't get abducted. They don't find it malevolent. They feel like the world is fine, everything's hunky-dory when they're playing in their part of the program that's like a sleep sheep. So it makes it appear that the ones who are having the experiences are like paranoid or there's something wrong with them, but that's really not true. You know?
Or have reached total consciousness ecstasy or something, or that's also another fake, screen feeling. Basically inducement. Also, there seems to be two opposite trends in official ufology. You've got guys like Stephen Greer, for example, who says everything is human-based. It's only the military that does abductions and throws in those screen memories of aliens, but there's no aliens involved. They're all good, and they're all here to help. And you have Yvonne Smith and David Jacobs, whom I interviewed as well, who say it's only ETs and there's no military involvement or collusion. And the screen memories of military uniforms are just ET induced, you know. So there's those two extremes, but we have evidence of collusion and that both sides exist and collude together.
And that's why Dr. Carla Turner was so awesome when she came out with her books, and she actually brought out a lot of what Barbara Bartholick had worked with her together on. Barbara did a lot of the regressions, and she knew how to do regressions and investigations very, very thoroughly, so that she could uncover the many different levels and also be able to demonstrate the different connecting points that are often neglected in other areas of ufological research. So I think that there's a lot of connections going on. It can't be this or it can't be that. It's a combination of many things, while there's a lot of different magic tricks taking place in between, while people are staying distracted and fighting and arguing over who's the good guy and who's the bad guy and who has the biggest ego. And really it's the small person and the small groups which might have more of the truth. And something that James Bartley and I had kind of figured out early on, it was not about working with large numbers of people. You could work with, let's say, 100 Muppets, and I don't mean to be derogatory, but Muppets would be people who are easily manipulated and don't really remember thoroughly what's going on because the screen memories have overtaken their awareness, or none at all, right? Or 5 or 6 aware and lucid people who've got the X factor going on, and they get lucid during their experiences or in their dreams, and they fight back. They fight for their awareness, and they realize the programming, and they start undoing it, and they take back their control. Now, those 6, that data is much more accurate compared to 100 of the other. So statistically, you might say, well, let's go with the statistics of the majority in the bell curve. Well, if you ask me, that's going to be what's false.
Right.
And the few who are clear are going to be more accurate of what's going on because they actually remember and can get lucid. So lucidity is absolutely number one in trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
The other thing is a lot of these factions that have their own ulterior motives will present themselves as something else just so that they can have sway with you. I'm not convinced the names that we know as what we've been told are even true with these groups of beings. You know, they're going to just give us whatever they want to, and that's going to form our own perception, which is a type of brainwashing in the interaction, which sets the stage for their actual ulterior motive, which is not what they tell us. They're never going to reveal what that is. You know, so names,
names of species or origins, you know, Ashtar or Pleiades or Venus or Assyrians. That's very trendy too, and it's very similar to the my last month's interviews I did with Wayne Bush about NDEs. The NDers, you get the same feeling that very few of them among the thousands of NDE testimonies have seen through the veil and the filter that was put in front of them, you know, with the false light tunnel and the screen memories of their parents or loved ones, and also beings or false guys, Jesus, Mohammed, Buddha, and Vishnu, all types of archetypes. And sometimes they observed, they even saw some type of technology on the other side that was bugging. You know, was going around in circle like a wheel, and the thing would show Jesus at 1 second and flap to another divinity, and you know, it's just adjusts to your cultural and religious background, or sometimes not even. But the thing is that comes back quite often is that on the other side you have access. Once you have gone through the veil and you have access to all universal knowledge, and all your memories are erased on your way back. So basically, once we come to this world, our memories have been erased. So we've lost all memories. Isn't that the evidence that we're in a farm, basically a gigantic farm. And when you
Yeah.
look at David Paulides' work, on the missing persons in national
Oh, yes, yes.
around the world, and I was in an interview with Juan in Spain yesterday, and we also talked about the amount of people that were disappearing every year in Spain, in France, same thing in Belgium. Thousands of people disappear just from the map. It just this is just another evidence that we're in a farm. So
Well,
that's why the experiencers are very important, because they have conscious memory.
Yeah.
Most of them,
Yeah.
of their meeting with the shepherds that are invisible, basically.
And this brings me to when I died when I was 13, and the experience I had, which is interesting you're talking about that, because I had drowned when I was 13, and this is how I learned about the false light, and the mechanization of death, that it's actually a machine, the way it all works. Because when I died, there was no light. There was no anything. It was pitch pure. I mean, it was like a void of darkness. But it was not terrifying. I remember as I was dying and everything went dark, I was asking myself, well, where's the light? Where's the light? Everybody's talking about the light. And I thought something was wrong with me because there was no light. And in fact, when I calmed down, and at this point I had drowned, I had just calmed down, and it was the most beautiful experience I ever had. When I had the void, I call it the deep, I felt like everything outside the deep was what was manipulated and untrue, and nothing could penetrate the deep. So you could just go into the deep and go anywhere. It was the most perfect stillness experience ever, but it baffled me because the programming was that you would wait for people you knew, you would wait for the light, everything would happen, and you'd be taken care of. So having that experience at 13 was what showed me the reality versus the trap, and the machines that they use with our, quote, fire bodies, which they harness. They harness that to create the technology that they use against us to trap us when people die, including the whole game of reincarnation. And, they keep you occupied with that so that it's a hamster wheel. But it's a technology that they're doing this.
Yeah, they want us to come back, basically, to reinvest the farm and keep feeding whatever their appetite is, which we know about. You ladies have dealt with what they feed off of.
Yeah, we get to run into those all the time with the reports I get with the love bite or the dark side of Cupid, where someone was in a relationship with someone else who displayed these energy vampire characteristics, but they're very dramatic. It's because the other person is actually hosted by a non-human entity or something working through them that literally vampires their energy and throws chaos and all this dark energy into their lives. And they have sociopathic and narcissistic types of behaviors, but there is a dynamic that you can identify. But oftentimes this is sometimes mistaken for a twin flame, because the sexual chemistry and the connection on the soul level, and even the telepathic and the synchronicities, is very profound with some of these beings that are working through humans as hosts to basically create these relationships. That is a major vampire operation. So it's learning how to work with that and identify, what's a true twin flame versus was one of these manipulated things, because it can hurt people very badly. It could kill them. And so it's dangerous, but you can identify it once you know what it feels like, what it looks like, and they're really out in full force now, I could tell you that.
And the trauma bonding that they do when they target people to unite like that, the targeting is contingent largely on having a past life with that person already. So you already have a foundation established. And then the trauma bonding is that much stronger because you may not be aware of it, but you do have all these past experiences of depth with the person. So you don't know what's true or isn't true, because your memories are being, it's like you're having double memory. You're feeling the past life experiences with the person and the genuineness of that, and that gets technologically hijacked in a trauma bonding form to be vampirized. So it really, really confuses people.
Yeah, so you can. That's the feeling some people have sometimes when they meet whom they think they've known forever, or for in a former life or a previous life, past life, and maybe it's just a false memory or something, a screen memory.
Sometimes it is a false memory, because I have heard that before from people who realize that they actually had programming just so that they would meet with another person, and then they would be used as a team in certain super soldier kind of situations where two milabs would be bonded together, and the programmers would do anything to make sure that they got together because they wanted to use them as a duo, because they were stronger together as a team. So some of what I wrote in the Love Bite in terms of why are they doing this? Why are they bonding some people together? But in some of the milabs and the super soldiers and people who are in these secret projects, they may be bonded because their psi level or their psi ability is amplified when they're together, because it's like a soul tantric union that they're able to catalyze these kinds of connections, I think also with alien help and alien technology, to create a heightened psychic ability. Then they go and use them on operations like remote viewing or any number of things. So that was one reason why they put them together, or why, let's say, a reptilian was put together with a female milab and had a sexual encounter where the kundalini was activated, and then right after the reptilian left, then the military would come and take them and then use them on military black ops. And this was basically a sequence, a particular standard operating procedure for some. So they're using these high-level occult tantric methods that the reptilians have taught and do with humans, and then they work in conjunction with military and their operations as well. So someone is always getting something out of it, of course, except for the operative who's being used as a slave. So,
or as a portal, like,
yeah,
as someone
right.
who's...
And that's in the anomalous experiences. When you see the mass hypnosis that people watch an event or a worldwide event like the Olympics, or a concert with Illuminati singers and occult artists, that drain energy out of you, or sexual energy mainly. Actually, they love to feed off of that, and a lot of flyby saucers have been seen at stadiums, flying over stadiums as if they were.
Yeah.
The
I remember there was there was a man that James Bartley knew in San Diego County who used to do, like, raves were really big in the 90s, where the kids would get together and they'd have music and they'd party and take ecstasy. But there was a young man who did these raves, and he said, he would see craft, not only see craft roaming around when these people would get together and do what they do, but he actually saw grays manifesting there during the raves, and they were, basically feeding on the energy. But I remember there was one thing that Barbara Barthik had told us years ago, and it must have been a report, when some people would see the globe ships, when certain globe ships would go over large areas where there was a catastrophe or war or some event to occur, or after it occurred, that those globe ships were used to take up the souls that had died in these catastrophes, and they were basically taking the souls. And they were waiting for these catastrophes so they can basically harvest the souls in those traumatic events.
What would you say, both of you, or either one of you, to the people who say we are creating our own reality, and basically the ETs are just a reflection, a mirror image of ourselves, and we're creating them in our own reality? What would you say to that? Because I know to me it's 50-50. It's just we create.
Yeah.
But to some people it's just their reflection of ourselves.
Well, I mean, I do believe that we do create, and we're dreaming, our reality to a certain extent, but I think it's a co-creative dreaming that's occurring. But I think as we become more aware and more integrated with our eternal spirit in the eternal now, we have more control over what we're manifesting by being very mindful of what we're believing and what we're feeling and who we're interacting with. But I still think there's a level of uncertainty and entrapment here while we're in the body, and that there's certain things that just because of the laws of what we're living in here, basically we're in a war zone and we're in occupied territory. So when you go into a game that's run by someone else, we got to play by the rules of the game. Or if we've come in incarnations, sometimes there are people who have gone under regressions, for example, and they have found that there were certain soul agreements they had to make while they came in, and there was certain agreements for them to be in this family, and this would happen and that would happen, and then they had to abide by these agreements just to be here, which pulls us into a game of other rules and other deities and principalities which are in rule here. So there's a certain level of uncertainty and control that exists on the earth. Even different places on the earth, there's different principalities where if you're in one location, you may have much less freedom in your life than if you go somewhere else, and it could be the spiritual principality alone that's the reason for it. So that's a big topic, and I don't know if Lauda wants to share on that.
Yeah. We are creators. This is first and foremost. We are a reflection of the initial spark, mind made manifest. We create worlds. That's what we do. I think what's happening here in this hijacking reality, this is not the reality that we were supposed to be living. So in the dream, we began to co-create with them, and we were infected by the psychic virus. Some of these parasites, some of these ancient beasts of the anti-deep, they come with a mimicry parasitic mind that infects us psychically, like a psychic membrane takes over. And we can't tell the difference if it's us or them, because the fusion is so, it's undetectable almost. They're perfect mimics. I do, however, think that in this hijacking, we allowed it to occur. And in allowing it to occur, it could have been a moment of weakness. We gave up everything that we came in with, and that gave them the right to start swiping our minds. That gave them the right to literally take and hybridize our DNA and do everything that has been done. You could say that we created everything, because if you really want to get quantum about it, we did, and we have created the entire experiment ultimately, even in the co-creation, because we agreed to parts of this, obviously. Ultimately, what I think has to happen is that we have to take back our reality. We have to take back our dream and manifest our world according to our terms and conditions, and exile, obliterate, completely wipe out all of these entities and beings that have hijacked our power. So the more that we take what is ours back, the more that we can, give them nowhere to live. Essentially create a place where they can't live in.
But wasn't it a deception to start with, to begin with, to agree?
Absolutely, yeah.
And like I see so many experiencers who say, well, I have a spiritual agreement. I made a contract with the entities that have been abducting me and hybridizing me and so forth. So I'm part of the experiment. I agreed to it. And wasn't there a deception to begin with?
It's absolutely a deception. The basis of all of this is always an agreement of entrapment in some way. And usually they take something from you without you knowing it, and then they give you and present something for you to take to, quote, help you. So the whole thing is absolutely a deception, and there's no doubt about it. And the deceptions kept occurring because they were able to just swipe us when they wanted.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what happened in the very beginning, because I've heard this by other researchers. For example, there was an original creation where it wasn't the synthetic overlay matrix hologram like it is now, where it was meant to be more of a playground with people who had light bodies and might have had androgynous nature, and that at some point there was an infection and an invasion that occurred where the androgynous ones, the spirits, were literally split, and then the power of that was taken to empower the ones who were invading, and then it was like a type of entrapment and infection that was like it's a forced agreement of entrapment through war and through deception. So I think a lot of the scriptures try to put a lot of blame on, you know, the origin in terms of the sin and the fall and everything. And I think what we're noticing now in clinical practice is obvious deception and entrapment that it seems like it's totally not fair. I mean, it would be like they have this long agreement that you have to sign, but in the fine print they tell you all these other things, but they really don't let you know what it is, and they try to sell you what you think you're getting a good deal, but it's really a shitty deal, you know? It's more like that.
Sort of like a life insurance agreement or something.
Well, they tell you can decorate the farm and everybody's happy with that. You know, basically this is what it is. Everybody knows it's a prison system. Everybody knows they're enslaved, but everybody seems to be just happy to decorate their, you know, prison cell.
Yeah,
a little of the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
The Stockholm syndrome. That's pretty much what mankind is all about.
Yeah.
But I think there's something underlying this, okay? I think ultimately we have to ask ourselves, what is it that human beings fear the most? And that answer has everything to do with why they allow themselves to be trapped to the extent that they have been. And what they fear the most is to be responsible and accountable for their own universe, to be accountable completely to every choice as a creator, because that means there are no crutches, no denials. You have to take your entire life fully and be in charge of every choice you make as a creator. And I think humanity is terrified of that. They're terrified of their own power, and only a few are willing to really stand in that, because that actually means that you are confronting everything on the basis of your sovereignty, your authority, and the power that that brings. But you need to be sure about what that is before you do it. And most are afraid. So they want the shackles. They want the golden handcuffs.
Well, a lot of times in the quantum healing modality where we go to the origin of the trauma, and sometimes, let's say someone prayed and asked for help. Anybody help me? So one of these hyperdimensional beings said, sure, I'll help you. And I'll be your guide. I'll be your protector. And then that being links into them and acts like their guide or their childhood friend. And it's really, you know, maybe a reptilian or a Draco or another being that links in and vampirizes their energy or directs their life in such a way that it actually pulls them away from the wisdom of their spirit, and instead they're dependent on this particular guide. So that actually has happened quite a bit in sessions where, let's say if I take them back or I take them through a guided session and we're looking for an origin cause, a lot of these beings will masquerade as, oh, well, they're their protector, they're their guide, and they're really just a parasite.
Right. And those guides have all the shapes and forms that we can imagine that pleases their target. What about angels, archangels, ascended masters? Are they just another species of fallen angels? Because there's been a lot of deception with the gifts that were given by so-called angels or archangels.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, because I still believe that there's good ones and there's ones that are using deception to carry out whatever agenda they have. And there have been, I mean, even in my own life, I've had angelic intervention to help me. And it was very clear and it was, profound. And I felt like it was good. And I know that Lauda has also had supernatural intervention of a definite several times. where, you know, warrior angels came to intercede. So I think there are good ones that do intercede and help certain people, and there are good and bad.
I
And
also
so
think that some will do good, okay, to make themselves appear like they're benevolent. But, you know, so I think it's not as clear cut. Some, yes, I agree. I mean, I've had many experiences. I also think a lot of these experiences can be us quantumly from our future selves and our true higher being coming in and doing a lot of these miracles that happen. So, you know, the question about truly, well, the word angel never existed, by the way, either. That's something that's relatively a new term. In history, those that had wings were typically the serpentine, you know, reptilian
Drax, yeah.
Those are the ones that had wings. And it's depicted in Sumeria, it's depicted in ancient Egypt, it's depicted all over ancient civilization. Nobody else had wings. So angelic, the word angelic is a relatively new term it just didn't exist. In the Bible, the quote angels that are there, they didn't have wings. They looked like humans. So they shapeshifted into humans and they would just come to you as a human form. I think that this is an inverted reality. So much of the fallen forces operate here for the most part, I think. And then you do have some that penetrate the veils and operate on behalf of what is a benevolent evolution.
And penetrate the veil. That's the right expression. What do you think there is really hiding behind the veil? That, you know, on the other side of the veil. What according to you?
Yeah. What is the veil?
Yeah.
Yeah, the veil alone. I mean, even in the Gnostic scriptures, they talk about the veil. I think that's above the Ogdode, and there's actually a veil that covers the upper from the lower, and the eternal realms versus the realms of the demiurge, which we're in, which is the false matrix reality. So it's really getting through. And a lot of times I think our prayers can't be heard because there's literally a veil, and that it's hard to be heard by the higher unless you have a deeper connection. And so there is an upper and a lower, and there is a veil. And so even I think good ones coming through the veil, they may come through at a risk, because we are in territory here that is under the demiurgic.
They do come through as a risk, and I'm one of those because I have memory of coming in through the back door, and it was like it was a dangerous operation to even get in. So
yeah,
those of my experience that have been benevolent have all stated the same thing, that they had to be very cautious because this was one of the most dangerous territories, and the fact that they managed to get through, they were being hunted. Like,
yes.
Technology here and the way that the forces operate, they know exactly when there's an intruder.
Yeah.
And the hunting begins, right? So my experiences with those, including the Lyrian, right, that you remember, Evie, I tell her.
Yes. You might want to talk about the one who warned you, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, but the Lyrians are actually key in a lot of people's experiences who were the originals who were here when the invasion took place to split us, you know, and the goddesses.
I didn't know about the Lyrians at that point when I met him, because when he introduced himself, that's when I learned about the Lyrians, because he said he was a Lyrian. And he could only meet me for a brief moment in time. He could only be here for so long, because if he stayed too long, he would probably be killed. So he was freaking out. Like, he gave me he was the one that told me a lot about what is really going on in terms of the artificial nature of everything. In the takeover, he was the one also that said that they hunt those that penetrate the veil and that are here, and they'll kill them if they can. So he told me, he said many of theirs don't make it. There's a limited window that they can come in and do what they need to do, which he was very frustrated, because I was so freaked out at the time. I was having so many experiences that I didn't want to really even meet him, because I knew he was an alien. It was very apparent. He had orange skin. You know, his hair was
Oranges, yeah.
yeah, he had
Black and matted and
it was black and thick and weird, and his ears were pointed. His kind of looked like he was normal, wearing like this trench coat and a hat, and it was all so apparent. I thought, you know what, I just can't handle this anymore. So the poor Lyrian is following me around just so that he could sit me down for, you know, a talk to tell me what he came to tell me, because he's like, you know, we came in for you, like, can you just give us? And I was no, and then I finally did give him, and then of course what he told me was just in many ways confirmation of things that are very terrifying.
So did he communicate with you telepathically or?
No, he met me. I mean, they're telepathic, but they also speak. So I said, you want to meet me? Because he was following me around, and it was finally, I had to go, okay, what? And he's like, I need to sit down with you. I said, fine, you want to talk to me? We talk in a cafe. So we were in a cafe in a public place, and he was talking to me like word for word, because they learn, you know, whatever language they want to. Most of all of these beings have technology where they download all the languages. It's not a big deal for them. But yeah, they're mostly, and they can be telepathic, but they also know what you're going through at the time. So when they make any kind of conversation, or when they make contact with you, they know what your state is. They know if you're hyper sensitive, or if you have PTSD. They know all of these things. So he was very, he was trying to be as gentle as possible, considering what I was experiencing at the time. And so I sat down with him, and then I told him, I go, you make a lousy human. You look alien, like you have orange skin. And that's how I learned about the Lyrians, and the whole, they are helping us. They are trying to come in, but many of them are dying because they're hunted down.
And can you even maybe consider that it was a another type of speech to convince you that it was a very positive contact, so that, you know, there's some positive reports out there, but like for healing, you know, healing sessions, for example, there's been e-healings and stuff.
Interference, like yes. Or when you walk in through a void, or not a void, a portal. I've had experiences where you walk just through an area, a zone that, this area was actually deemed by the Buddhists to be very sacred for portals and for what could be done in and through those portals. When I went through there, I experienced a type of surgery that had happened. So upon entering the location, which the Buddhists have sanctioned this this particular place as very special, I had immediately felt all these beings coming, and they were, I felt suspended, and I felt that they were doing surgery to me that I didn't quite know what it was, but it felt like they were recalibrating my body and rebalancing it so that it was equal, because the energy was divided. So after it was finished, I felt completely balanced, and I can't even explain. It was so strong. Like I hadn't felt that for years. So yes, I think that we get help in many ways like that. So and I think in essence that they have to do it that way to protect themselves as well.
The next question is, you know, whoever wants to answer, isn't there a goal to keep a certain number of us here on this farm, and they do need to maintain a baseline of positivity and hope alive to keep the slaves asleep from rebelling, and you know, keep them hopeful. Could this be just another deception inside the 3D that's been hacked?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's obvious even in the 3D world with the government and no aliens at all, that they want to keep us dummied down with technology and TV and mind control programming and the vaccinations and the chemtrails and the whole 9 yards. But there's so many ways in which that could be done, and I think a good study of mind control especially MK Ultra and trauma-based mind control and the high-level occult sorceries that are done. It's good to do a study of that so that you could actually tell when that's happening to a group of people, or even in the alien or the ET contact experiences, to really take a closer look at that. And I think a lot of earlier reports that were done in ufology, they didn't really know, like in the public arena, they didn't know about the trauma-based mind control, MK Ultra, monarch programming, and the high-level bloodline stuff. Only the secret people in the cults really knew about that. So when a lot of people, let's say in the 50s, had these experiences of positive ETs, now you might want to take a look at it from the perspective of a mind control operation that was being done to cull the population into believing in them so that they could allow them entrance into our reality to do whatever they're doing. So they could put on the positive thing, or they could put on whatever they want, as long as it gets our agreement in. So now I guess I'm really skeptical of even ones that claim to be good, because I think once you challenge them, I mean, this has happened to people that I've worked with over the years, where they thought their beings that were interacting with them were good, and they didn't question their authority. But once they questioned their authority and they resisted abduction, that was when the hell broke loose, and they started getting interfered with and attacked. And instead of like the Greys coming or these other beings, then the reptilians would come straight in and do a direct abduction and punish them and put more force on them. But if they don't resist and they play along with the program, they could be happy-go-lucky and nothing traumatic may even happen, and it makes them believe that everything's fine. And even in a case in the Dark Side of Cupid that I put, I think it was one that Barbara Bartholick had given me, but it demonstrated, a woman, how she had a classic abduction on her way to work, missing time. She had very severe arthritis, osteoarthritis, where her fingers were literally like in pain and kind of, bad shape. And the beings, when she was on the craft, they actually healed her hands, so that when she came back, she knew something had happened, but she had completely missing time, no memory. But then what did they do to my hands? They healed my hands. But then along with all that came a lot of other interactions, which were definitely invasive and very deceptive, and it opened her up to a more demonic element that existed altogether in her experiences. And it was quite interesting, because this particular woman had had a very vivid out-of-the-body type of experience when she was young, like a young girl, at the dentist office, when she was given, I don't know if it was laughing gas or some kind of anesthetic, where she went out of the body, and out of the body she met with these beings who were alien, and they had like a widow's peak hairline or some kind of weird black cap that made it look like they had a widow's peak hairline. And they interacted with her as if they knew her, and were just basically visiting her during this out-of-the-body state. But it wasn't until years later, when she had some major abductions and then found out what happened, that these same beings came back in her life and were instrumental in some very dark, some almost demonic activity. So these beings had followed her all life long. And all these elements occurred together, including the wonderful healing and, a channeling, and then near possession. And boy, Barbie wasn't even allowed to even share this case in public, because they would just, throw her off stage.
Well, demons exorcise demons. And we know that so often what you will see in all of these other, religions, you've got people with demons exorcising demons.
Yeah. And that happens, and you see that in the New Age Love and Light community, where many people claim to be healers, and they may be able to do some things, but then the person doesn't necessarily become healed for very long, and then maybe worse things, like 7 more demons come back that are worse. And so those kinds of things are happening. And I actually had brought this up in another interview. Not only that, but the blindness, how in the love bite, for example, or in one of these twin flame things, or we think it's a twin flame, and that we're blinded by the love and blinded by the light. Well, the blinding by the light also takes place in some of these near-death experiences with the false light matrix. And so this whole element of being blinded by the light and also being blinded by love. And what does that tell us about our perception and our discriminating wisdom? That element of our spirituality has been hacked or is lacking, or we've been corrupted and infected to such a degree that something else is taking over, so that the true discriminating wisdom is not allowed to come forth in our being. And so this is what I think, that this goes back to the Gnostic, the demiurgic, the archontic mind virus, which infects religions, and especially the dominator patriarchal ones, which oppress the voice of the feminine wisdom, which is the Sophia, which is the discriminating wisdom. That voice is squelched and oppressed, or corrupted and twisted, so that the dark side of the feminine power is abused with the dark side of the male power to create all this occult control in the world. So if we can retrieve back the feminine wisdom, which is the discriminating wisdom, which could actually give us the true insight and the purity of perception to see what's happening, even in one of these twin flame things, then we will be able to understand what we're dealing with. We're going to be able to see what they are purely through our spirit eyes and their intentions. It will be direct and will be immediate. But this is not happening in the love and light community, and you have to ask what the hell's working through them that they can't see through the love and light, and that ain't working. Not working with these kinds of predators.
Same thing for the Catholic priests and their exorcism sessions. I mean, like you said, the demons bring on new demons. And
yeah. And the other thing that's been hijacked, though, is love itself. In the division and all of what has occurred from the beginning of this all, we were removed from our own ability of what actual love is. So we were divided from ourselves. So if we're divided from ourselves and we can't love ourselves, we can't possibly love. So what people are experiencing and thinking is love is itself a part of this, quote, infection.
Or the counterfeit spirit.
It's a counterfeit spirit. And this is where the manipulation is taking place, because it's not really original love anyway. It is manipulated. It is like a drug. It is technology.
Yeah, the love drug.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what we talked about in the Love Bite Plus panel, and why it's so hard to get away from this love obsession when it happens, and when we're caught into one and we never knew that this was even real, that it's easy to fall into that trap, because it really does pull your heartstrings and you really do feel genuine love for someone. But I think what's happening is that we are a hybrid combination of a truly divine eternal spirit that's overlaid with many different energy bodies, that is actually of a lower creation and then in human physical form, so that the lower energy body, including the chakras, can be manipulated, as well as the energies that in that, so that part is actually overriding the wisdom and the perception of the spirit. And that, so the counterfeit love and all this bliss kind of stuff can be so amplified that you get confused and you think it's real love. And it's unfortunate that many people who've gone through trauma, for example, or even maybe people who don't even think they have. In our original state, I think we were much more whole and androgynous and connected to a larger spiritual beingness that is more aware and that is so phenomenal and fantastic and loving. Our true nature is this pure love essence that is just phenomenal. But most people don't have a memory of that original connection, so we can't discern between the counterfeit and what really who and what we are. And so that makes it difficult for trauma, people who've been through trauma, because we have to reconnect to recognize who we are so that we can have the discernment to deal with all this other stuff.
And most of the magic technology is contingent on a mere projection system. This is the magic technology. People are responding and reacting to the mirroring and projecting of either what they lack or their core wound or what they really truly want that they haven't been able to. So people are being manipulated easily because they're coming from a place of already having experienced the splitting of themselves, the fractures, the breaches.
And I think that the fracture goes back even before, let's say, our current incarnation in these bodies, that there were probably an original essence where we were maybe more androgynous or had a much larger quotient of light spirit.
But
That when we first came in, And then maybe some of us had that, and some of us actually remember it. And then the invasion happened, where there was literally a splitting of the spirit that had to remain hidden, because that would have been hijacked to use against us. So things were hidden and things were split. So I think there's much more that has happened in our Earth history that many of us don't remember, but I think some of us are starting to remember. And it goes back to how our spirits were split, like trauma split.
Yeah.
So
And we had to
separate
protect,
from source, basically.
right, and separated from your own source.
Right.
But I also think that us protecting those parts of ourselves that we did not want to be hijacked would be the true essence of our, this would be like the most precious library of your existence. And that had to be secreted somewhere entirely, in a place that couldn't be obtainable by any hijacking force. So we wouldn't be able to have memory of it ourselves until it was time that we could step into our power.
So
I think this goes into some of the ancient Gnostic stories, which are hard to put together because so many of them are fragments and incomplete. But I really think it has to do with, the whole Adam and Eve thing, and how the archons raped Eve, and how the epinoia of the light jumped out of her into a tree because she was trying to hide it, so that they couldn't hijack that and then hybridize her to create these hybrids that had the spirit but that was under the wrong control. So I think there's a lot of hybridized lines that are half, quote, archontic and half original human, but everything has been so hybridized and degraded down. But something like that has occurred since the very beginning. That was, I think, many of whoever the originals were tried to protect that spirit and tried to hide it to the point of having amnesia about it all.
Amnesia is really what it's about. If we recovered our memories, our true memories, we'd probably gain our sovereignty back, or some of our free will that has been hacked or tampered with.
Yes.
But our history is a lie. Basically, it's a bunch of lies. Our genesis is based on lies.
Yeah.
It's our lie. What is the true? How can we access any feeling of truth in this dimension that we can feel hasn't been tampered with? You talked about your experience, your NDE experience, Lauda, and this probably was the closest you came to experience real, I wouldn't say love, but the deep, that feeling of fullness,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, complete. I had other experiences where I slipped into the negative void, and the difference between the two. And the negative void is connected to this reality is connected to a series of unlimited infinity system astral worlds. And the astral worlds are also astral heavens. So it's not just below, it's above. They have it all covered. So, and they're all on the lower frequency. And there is a void that you step into in association with this, quote, lower astral reality and its lower astral heavens. That I slipped into a few times in my life, and that was horrifying, and there was a big difference. But the experience of the deep, that was absolute complete. I remember thinking, now I can do whatever I want. I can create whatever I want. I'm going. But at that time, I was pulled out of the water, and they started trying to bring me back to life. So they were resuscitating me, and but I was gonna go. I loved it. There was nothing that felt better, and I think that is the closest that I've ever come to something that is truly real and not a part of this dream within a 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 dream ad infinitum. These looping systems of reality and mind control. Pretty much, what we can perceive and conceive is mind control here. This is all programming. I can't say that anything that comes in our minds comes from outside or the deep, because we are so mind controlled here. They have like really covered every ground.
Yeah.
And the magic that they use goes right into our the way that we perceive on all levels.
Yeah.
With connection to all of the experiences that we have on, even temporally, even utilizing time travel. This is all. It's all mind magic. It's all.
Yeah. And
so what is ours? What is really ours?
Exactly.
When it comes to here.
Precisely. And it's not an apology for our behavior as humans, but if our thoughts and behavior are really hacked into and not depending upon only ourselves as creators of this behavior and those thoughts, and they're not self-engineered, it's like fake channeling messages. I mean, like
Oh yes, yeah. Or the whole mind parasite thing that, of course, Carlos Castaneda made it popular to talk about the flyers and the foreign installation, which is really similar to the archontic mind parasite that is actually has become a natural part of who we are in our physical body as well as our the lower energy bodies. And that when we start to discover what that is and how it plays itself out, it could even program us to project a reality that it wants our spirit to project, because it has its own agenda and it works through us, just like the alien parasites will work through a human to use our spirit as a battery to carry out its will and its life. It's like we are the host for its life to continue its consciousness because it really has no life. So it's something similar that happens. So there are people that I'm corresponding with who are doing deep self-exploration in terms of undoing, let's say, the very high level mind control programming that happens on a much more subtle level in our psyche. And it's not just simple, let's say, MK Ultra, where they give you a program command, after a trauma. But this is something that's much more sophisticated, that if you do things like Jungian dream analysis and you get lucid in your dreams and you start calling out or intending on, facing your own shadow or alter personalities or parts of yourself versus the watchers or the foreign installation or what is acting like artificial intelligence programs, then you're going to start to see this manifest itself out, not only in your dreams, but you're going to see it manifesting outside of you. And I'm beginning to think that the incorporation of the artificial intelligence technologies and its invasiveness is much more profound in this era of computers and cell phones and television and Netflix, and there's ways that I recognize it when it's operating. And in how reality is literally being created, there's a telepathic link that makes several things happen simultaneously as a result of one thought, that there's no mistake that there's something happening that's a type of infection that takes place that's actually pre-existing in our minds as part of actually being human. So it's being able to identify it, how it plays out in the dreams, and then actually confronting it and disempowering it with fearlessness to basically have the larger aspect of your eternal spirit take control. Take control of the program and eliminate the illusions and the programming. And then when you start doing that, it keeps trying to reinsert itself and reinsert its reality, and it'll happen around you, people around you, or it'll happen in your dreams. And when you start to recognize this, it's actually a phenomenal exploration of discovery. And each person individually may notice this in a different way, but I believe that there's a way that we can get to this and we can eliminate it from our minds and from our lives.
Right, and so there's a big stake over our timeline and the Mandela effects and all this CERN experiments and those microwave weapons and hyper frequency weapons, directed technology weapons, and all this mind control technology. And I think Lauda wrote an article on her website regarding what she foresaw coming in the months of 2017, right? You were talking about an activation through electromagnetic remote impulse systems, which will cause mass rioting and civil unrest in the months to come. And before we get to that with Lauda, I wanted to go back to, because this is very connected to it, to the ET disclosure over the years, with the Citizens Hearing and Greer and so forth, and now with the alien projects in Peru and the mummies there was like a couple of days ago, a double talk about an ET invasion coming from the government. And it's all coming from the government. ET disclosure and ET threats, invasions, and this is all the blue beam agenda that Werner von Braun talked about in the 50s. Bill Cooper talked about in the secret government, I think, or shadow government, and also this Canadian journalist that died prematurely, early at an early age. What was his name? Serge Monast talked about it. And many people talked about the blue beam thing, and Reagan talked about it at the NATO, I think it was the NATO, the United Nations Congress, in a speech, and he said, "Well, if we were all unite, if an ET invasion or something like that, that nature came to invade us, all this building up to a one world government and one world religion, and this is what you probably meant and saw in your visions of Lauda, right?"
Oh yeah. Oh, I saw that. I saw that when I was very young. I saw that before I even knew what, I was being shown the map of the United States of America. I had no idea what that was. I was little. I'd been shown everything that was to come ever since prior to coming in here. So when I was actually birthed into this body, I had full memory of that. And so the visions kept coming and I kept being shown. And there were markers. And I was, shown that with certain markers, it would tell us what would be around the corner and what would come next. So you look at this marker, this marker, this marker, all the way through, because the one thing was that 2017 would be a critical year, right? The beginning of the wave would start coming in. It would start building momentum in 2008. By 2009, it would begin its penetration, and it would be a series of waves after that. 2017, critical. Towards the end, the fall, winter of 2017, we would be seeing a lot of activity, and there would be rioting. There would be a lot of artificially stimulated emotional dysregulation in people throughout the planet. They would be orchestrating synthetically events, aka they're not original. Okay, they're all contrived, and this would cause a lot of civil unrest. There would be a lot of uptick with regards to, quote, a potential war, potential nuclear strikes. I was shown too that would happen. It starts at the East Coast, works its way in. So and I'm not saying that it's all going to happen right away, but all of this it's contrived, it's manipulated, just like the Twin Towers. And that was they wanted to play with what would happen, the potentials. If we do this is going to be magic technology, because the Twin Towers also, it's reflective of the DNA, right? The double helix. It's all of this super subtle connecting with all of these other levels of our reality. And so this is what I was shown that they were going to be causing using blue beam. And a lot of what they were going to be doing with this quote disclosure is all blue beam.
Right.
The real beings aren't going to come out until the really heavy duty stuff happens.
So they may introduce the some ET species or factions as saviors. To our
yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to play two against each other, but they're both on the same side, so that the world is going to be checkmated.
Just like human politics.
Right.
Always created dual sides. They all work together. It's like all world wars were funded by the same banksters, and they were all allies. The Nazis.
And they're going to cause catastrophes.
Right.
And they're going to be large enough so that the population is wounded enough to lose any faith within themselves or within, and they want them to be within the system as well. So when they cause the catastrophe, the food shortages at that point will be affected, the gas will be affected. They're going to tell people, oh no, well, you know, come to us, we're going to take care of you, and this is just another trap. And then, you know, from there on, it's going to be a series of events. It's like a domino effect. And this whole good cop, bad cop scenario with the aliens, with the disclosure, it's all manipulative. None of it is, you know, towards, I mean, I've seen some really heavy, I've seen some really heavy stuff. But towards the end, the real reptilians do come forward within the war. Okay, so at that point, they're not going to care.
This almost reminds me of something that I heard about.
The good ones are going to be Palladian-like, by the way. They're going to be that kind of Nordic, beautiful, shimmering white hair.
The shining ones.
The shining ones that are just, you know, spellbinding. And they're very vampiric, by the way. They have a charge in them so intense that people are magnetized to them. People are just pulled.
Yeah.
Very vampiric, but it feels really good.
Yes. And these kinds are very tricky because I know people who've had interactions with them and they seem like these most wonderful, sometimes Nordic, but they feel good, but then they actually take energy from people. Mm-hmm. And they do it in rituals and they're connected with some reptilians and others. But it's easy to hide. Nobody would ever know because they could create the bliss because they have that in them, but it's stolen energy, you know?
Yeah. And the world will be in a spell because of exactly what you said, Mark. It's synthetic manipulation, synthetic telepathy, and drugging. You know, mass drugging.
Actually, they showed the year 2017 in a Tom Cruise movie called Oblivion. I was told that a few times.
Okay, interesting. Well, there is also a reason why they have a lot of the planet still taking and consuming fluoride when everybody knows what fluoride does. I have been shown also that they will be adding something different to water to further pacify the populations at the beginning of all of this so that, you know, it's another form of easier control. They have already test piloted all of this in various different places and catastrophes throughout the world, which served to them as, you know, all the information that they were collecting was essentially for everything now, for this real end time agenda.
Like what they did in the concentration camps, for example. Yeah.
From 2047, from World War I even, set the stage for this end time agenda. And they knew it. There was a couple of very astute people in politics back then, prior to World War I, who spoke about it. So, interesting times. And you know what? If you're not in charge of your consciousness, if you're not in control of your vehicle, and if you're not driving your conscious vehicle,
something else will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We have to take control of our vehicle. It's not that easy. Some people talk about suppressing your chakras that will disconnect you from the matrix system, control grid. Is that viable, or do you advise to do that or not?
I really don't think you have to do that because, okay, we are energy. Everything in the universe is energy. So energy is energy. Now, the body is their technology. They've hybridized it. They've made the body exactly the way that they want it so that it can interface with the reality they created. This is what the physical body is. So although the chakras are manipulable, we are energy. And if you hone into your spirit and you're operating on your spirit, you function more as a beam of light, like a full beam. You're not as easily tinkered with through the chakras when you are, again, in control of your consciousness and knowing that we're energy and that what we manifest is through energetic communication and energetic intelligence through the heart, spirit, then you override this. I don't personally ascribe to playing with your personal chakras, because that tells me you haven't dealt with your core wounds connected to those chakras, which is where and how you've been manipulated. So there's a part that you just need to focus on core wounds, period, so that you can get over it all and really discard the narrative of your life, which is based on the synthetic matrix. Once you've done that, then you're not really going to be manipulated through those chakras or those meridians. You're going to be in charge of your own being as a, you know, as fire. You're fire. You know, it's so I don't really ascribe to this removal. I think the removal happens naturally. You disempower it naturally when you are fluid and you're doing the work that you need to, and you just live that. Then you just are harmonizing. You become harmony.
Right. Eve, you know about this, right? The methods. Can you give us a few techniques or methods that that we can use to rule out screen memories, parasites, and ultra, and withholding beliefs that that we would be a nuisance to our evolution, or
Well, I mean, I really think we have to really look at our core wounds and our blind spots and what emotionally triggers us in certain repeated patterns in our lives and our relationships. And really, I mean, it's all about trauma resolution and truly releasing what may be causing blind spots in our consciousness and in our energy bodies, because that creates blocks in our chakras as well, in our whole system. And when we could really be honest about what are our own true issues and traumas and really work on clearing that out with being really honest with ourselves, then things become more and more clear in our minds and in our energy bodies as well. I'm an advocate of lucid dreaming and using the dreams as a means of deeper exploration. But there's also other means that you can use, simple inner child work, for example, or the emotional freedom technique like tapping. And that helps take the charge out of traumatic memories and PTSD in the body. There's a lot of different methods you could use, Qigong, for example, where you harmonize the elements and you work with the yin and the yang and you get balanced and you learn how to calm your mind and calm the emotions so that the spiritual perception becomes more clear and switched on. And then once you have that connection and that clarity, then you know what to do really in any moment. And also, I do something called, it's inner empathy, but it's more like a deeper exploration of our needs and our feelings and what is the origin of whatever is going on in our life in the present moment, or in a memory where something's triggered, going to the deepest part of ourself where we can address that core feeling and the need beneath it. And then we get in contact with a deeper, compassionate, witnessing presence, which is more like the sacred spiritual essence of our being. And when we contact that, and it expands in our being and expands out of our heart, so that we come from a whole different place of being that is very powerful, and that we can actually have quantum shifts just by getting in connection with that part of ourself, where we can, this is what I do, it's kind of an intuitive, I don't really have a technique. It's just being present so that I can help guide someone to get in contact with that part of themselves so they can create that shift and reconnect with their compassionate witnessing presence, which is the true essence of who they really are. We all are as spiritual beings. And that's the natural part of us and our power. And it really does come from the heart. So doing the emotional healing work is absolutely key. So I try to help people to stay out of their head. Some people try to think it up and make it too complicated in their conceptual thinking. And we really got to make it much more simple in the heart and get out of the story and get into the heart and get into that compassionate witnessing presence that creates those powerful shifts. And that's where we connect with our power. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I know it's simplistic, but it actually really works. So
great. We'll pause for a minute.
Take a pause.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll be right back. So, ladies, this reality is holographic based, and some say that we're in a dream, and the reality is on the other side, on the outskirt, on the outside of this matrix. What do you think?
I think this is the cover for what we really live. And I think that part of the hijacking of us here is because they're utilizing us, because this is connected to all of the other realms. But I think what is right now, we are the projection of our consciousness. I feel like our bodies are somewhere else, just like I feel the body of the actual earth is somewhere else. And we may be with her, and some part of the hijacking, it's possible that our bodies are there with Mother Earth, and we've been used to give life to this infinity system matrix, which is all synthetic. So if we are the projection, then you could say that we've been inserted into a server, and that we are living a synthetic simulation of our consciousness that is in stasis somewhere. Now, the thing is about this, we feel a lot of things that feel real to us in a way, although I do agree with you, Mark. I think that the reality feeling of what it really is to be real is more on the other side than it is here. However, I also feel that the work that we're meant to do on a universal level, on a multiverse level, is in the body. So even if we've been inserted in a machine, and this is a machine reality, a technology, a simulation, what I was shown was that our spirit consciousness is meant to override and take over all platforms of reality, regardless of how synthetic, how technological they are, and how removed from the actual organic they are, because we are mind made manifest. We are energy, we are frequencies, and with our spirit consciousness, it can override any state of reality. And then by merging those two together, spirit to body, we can literally undo all synthetic platforms and really create the real earth experience, the real living experience in body.
What's the critical mass that is needed to do that? Because we're only a few of us to understand this notion of a synthetic reality, and our consciousness trapped into synthetic, well, organic bodies, but in an AI based reality, and the powers that be of this world, the predators, psychopaths, and empires that are ruling this pseudo elite, which is more cabal than anything else, is steering the masses towards a transhuman agenda, a microchipped population, a microchip to be able to pay your bills or to function in society. FEMA camps are under construction here. They are being built in France. There's news a few months ago. They found the fundings. It's on the penitentiary government website, so it's official. But it's not in the news. Somebody I know found it, and I thought it was fake news. It's not, unfortunately. But the FEMA camps are already in the U.S. already. So the rebels of the society will be parked against their will in those concentration camps. What can we do, basically, concretely, in this material 3D hologram to fight the powers that be?
Well, first of all, people have to become aware of the setup in what they're going to be doing artificially, and they're going to be setting things up so that catastrophes happen, so that they can corral the populations within society into their government facilities for aid. They're not going to be as obvious at the beginning and say, hey, there's the FEMA camp. What they're going to do is they're going to look like the good guy and give the food, give safe housing, but they're going to be moving people out of communities eventually. People need to become aware. One of the first steps that people need to do to really not fall for this is not accept the aid, okay? Because you want to accept the Kool-Aid, well, you got to take what's in the Kool-Aid. This isn't a good thing. It's an agreement of entrapment, and it's designed to get you completely in their control. Now, the implants, I was shown that when I was a child. that they were going to be actually putting them in here. This whole thing with the hand won't work, because this was only initially designed so that it wouldn't freak people out. And if it's in the hand, then they're like, oh, okay, it's not a bad thing. But the hand, anybody can cut it out. Anybody can just dig it out. So the plan is to put it in a place where it's inaccessible to you. You can't take it out if it's, you know, inside through your sinuses.
Also, although the beheadings have been very trendy with the false flags events, you know. So
well, in the fall, but that's the interesting thing as well, because all of this is related. The FEMA camps, everything. In 1999, I was given a phone call by some researchers that I was affiliated with, who said to me, "You need to meet me at the train tracks. There's something very interesting here." So this was 1999. I went to meet them, and we discovered what seemed like an endless amount of these boxcars, but they were all government issued new. There was no writing on any of the boxcars except for these designated numbers, and it looked very suspicious. So we did manage to get into one. We were able to do that. We had to find one that we were able to access, and within them there were stacks of guillotines, and around the cart in the inside there were chains. So like you had chains all around it with all of these stacked guillotines, and they're very sleek, they're very narrow. The technology is very refined now. So the agenda for the New World Order is going to incorporate beheading, because beheading is one way. This is a spiritual thing. They know that beheading a person means that they're able to capture the soul, harvest the body, because the body still functions. So they can just, remove the organs and whatnot and save it and do whatever they want. But they also know that on the soul level, they can capture you. Because when you're beheaded, you don't realize you're beheaded. Your heart's still going for a few moments, and you're still extremely conscious. This is part of the web. This is part of the net that they're going to be using. And so this is the reason why beheading throughout history has been so popular with the missions,
right.
And they're going to bring it back in. So if that was in 1999 that I witnessed that, this is now 2017. So, part of people becoming wise to what the plans are is knowledge is power. Don't buy the carrot. Do not buy the carrots that they give you, because you're going to be pinched uncomfortably. Start getting your own food, unperishables, get, beans, lentils, whatever, water. Just be smart about it so that you're not put in a position where you are going to perish. And the only option is to go to the government and to accept what the government gives you. So this is how we take it back. Everybody, if they do their own thing and they don't put themselves in the position of vulnerability, then they'll have an option. And less people that go and buy the carrot, the government's going to be, well, what are we going to do next then? I mean, the FEMA camps aren't going to come in right away, by the way, until the real disasters happen. And the plagues, the viruses, the biological warfare, which they're planning as well. So all of these things, the worst parts of the FEMA aren't until later. But they want to groom you. They want to seduce you into believing that the government is good and they'll help you, and that these mock catastrophes that are going to be completely orchestrated are going to be so that that the government's there to help you. But really, depend on yourself. Go to your friends, your neighbors, create society together, and start literally forming a community that you can rely on, that you don't need to ever go to the government for.
Going back to the beheadings, they haven't named that Islamic group ISIS for nothing. ISIS, it's all the Masonic ISIS deity and goddess, and it's not really the Israeli secret intelligence service, like a lot of them say, but they are crisis actors. Sometimes there's fake beheadings and state
Mm.
For beheadings also. I've seen those decrypted in some online and on some alternative websites, and it's you can see the Photoshop work and the crisis.
Well, we want to terrify you because it really
exactly.
works when you see that.
And they've already staged massive cyber attacks just recently. I think this is just a prelude to get people acquainted with the restriction of the internet.
Oh.
This is what's going to happen, and the cash is not going to be circulating in 2018 because there's already a law written in the European Union for 2018. So
really,
if you want to buy something, we'll have to get microchipped.
Oh God, really?
Which is what I was shown as well, by the way. They're going to be slowly removing cash, and they're going to be also giving indicators that there's a problem with gasoline as well. So that if there's going to be shortages all of a sudden, they're going to start doing things like that. So yeah, the ideal is cash is illegal, right? Nobody has cash anymore. Well, people, start buying silver and gold. Start actually doing something that is going to protect you against all of these, quote, plans of control, which is all totalitarianism. Eventually. That's their aim.
Right. So this is all the material stuff. On the psychic level, Eve, what do you think is maybe happening ahead for us?
Well, I think it's a similar scenario, and our spirits are probably trying to prepare us for those of us who are going to be going through these things. I think some people are gaining weight for no reason, and that could be because of potential food shortages in the future, or they're being compelled to change direction in their lives, to do something else, or to be more self-responsible, maybe start their own businesses or start gardens, or learn how to connect in their communities so they can have community support, so that they don't have to rely on sources that they don't know if they can trust. So I think community support and relationships, and really knowing how to self-support and be a self-supporting communities would be good. But I think the psychic thing, I mean, as a therapist, I think it's good to have groups where we can do, maybe I'm being idealistic, but compassionate communication circles where we can be present for one another in a way where we could recognize the humanity of each other, so that we could mitigate the reactive compulsive triggering or violence, or the dumb behaviors that people do when they're feeling traumatized or in crisis. And that there's ways that we can come to our own solutions through our own spirit and through our own interconnectedness and support, so that we actually learn how to communicate effectively by the rules of what I call compassionate and nonviolent communication. And when we can start abiding by those rules, then we can actually have workable communities. It's really the people who don't play by the rules, who are psychopathic and selfish, who play unfair, that are the difficult ones. So really it's learning how to have the discernment to know when to trust someone and know when to kind of pull back and make your connections elsewhere. And you have to have the discernment by connecting with your spirit to know, to basically intuit someone's intentions and probable reactions to certain situations, which is really almost like a military mindset, to be honest. Ultimately, I know I hate to say it, but
the antidote for against warfare. What do you think of this method, which I'm exploring these days with some researchers, one in New Zealand and another one in France, about reprogramming our water molecule, because we are made of water. We're a body of water, and intentions injected to this water inside our human containers, envelope, can change everything. Can heal. Can change the intention, on the inside, on the outside. What do you think of this method? I mean, there's a lot of ways to work on the water molecule.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love this. I love Dr. Emoto's work, and Dr. Reif also, who did a lot of frequency work. And it's absolutely true. I mean, the proof is there. Dr. Emoto has thousands of pictures that prove this. And the same way that we can literally reprogram our cells, because we are water, we can also reprogram nanos. We can also reprogram the waves that are, the microwaves that are coming, because we're energy and we're a frequency, and water amplifies, by the way. So when we reprogram that, it's an amplification of the frequency itself, which means we can override and reprogram everything. We have to start utilizing and how to use our power, our energy, our visualization abilities, our skills in detecting, discerning energy. The thing about this matrix is they have designed it so that people rely on 5 senses, when in fact we have hundreds and hundreds of senses, if not thousands. So this is the part of us we need to be in contact with and working in. You know, and I think their work is amazing when it comes to showing you the proof of that, of what that does.
Yes, I was thinking also about the Dr. Bob Beck's method. I don't know if you've heard of it. He created the Beck protocol. It's like a bioelectric protocol designed to help the body heal. He's using electrotherapy technology to basically, I think, heal blood cells, you know, the water inside the blood cells, electricity, micropulsing and blood electrification. So it's magnetic pulsing applied to basically your blood. So you drink ionic colloidal silver. That's one of the steps, and you drink ozonated water. So there's all kinds of techniques in this protocol. And this lady in New Zealand called Veda Austin, she also has a protocol for a high alkaline based high pH water over 9 or 10 pH, and which actually helped her heal from a terrible accident that she had. So you know, this water research is fascinating, because I think that it may be one of the solutions on the material level that also has an influence on your psychic abilities. You know, so.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I don't know if anybody's done live blood. Have you done live blood, Mark? No? Evie, live blood? Have you ever? No? Okay, so I've done live blood. And you have a super electron microscope, which basically looks at your blood cells. And you can see what is within the blood cell, the electrical, the electricity around the cell itself. You can actually witness it. When I had that done, I was actually manipulating the cells from a different room psychically, which fascinated the doctors. And they hadn't seen that before, so they began a series of experiments with me, because I could communicate with cells and I could do things with them. They were putting people in that had live blood, that had cancer and that had other illnesses, parasitic illnesses, and then they would have me in a room. They never told me what was what. I would have to write it down. I would have to work on it and do the visuals, and then they would record it, literally record what the blood was doing in response to what I was signaling and communicating. And you could see it. You could see the connection. You could see the cell changing and healing. So it was quite fascinating. So yeah, what you're saying is absolutely, I feel like a part of all of that is vital for everyone. And I also feel that the government has purposefully hidden all of this. And they really didn't want us having this kind of power to do this and to give this aid to ourselves. And I'm happy to hear that it's finally coming out there, and that, you know, people aren't being shut down, because our physicality here needs help. The density and the attack against us to, you know, to cause devolution is quite severe. So we need something like that. And the more of that information that's out, the better.
And we need to take action, because the you know, all the new agers are saying, oh, we'll just wait till we ascend to a higher density level or high dimension. You know, it's the right time, and it didn't happen in 2012. So it's not happening in 2017. But you know, what do you?
And it's not going to happen like that.
just through meditation. We're not gonna. We can do
just through diet.
Yeah.
Just buy the trinket, and
Right.
you're good.
So Eve, I'm gonna give you the final word. What would you have to say for this happy summertime season?
Well, I mean, I think it's good that we can be more aware, and that more and more people are becoming aware, and they're finding that if we have awareness, that gives us the key to all that we really need to do or be, and that alone is our power, and that we don't have to really be as afraid as they're trying to pump up, like a lot more powerlessness than is really true. We have to go through the illusion and connect with ourself and our spirit, and learn how to connect with each other on that level. So I think the heart-spirit connection with each other is very vital in, communities and relationships, and even in businesses, that we need to abide by the humanness as opposed to the mental construct and the technology and the triggering, and that we have to have an innate understanding of what brings us together in a good unity, as opposed to craziness and being manipulated as a herd, by other forces. So I think we do have the power to choose, and that the power to be aware of what we want to be aware of. So that's a good thing, and that more and more people really are waking up, and I see that as very hopeful.
And I think the moral of the story is that we are the ones who
looks like he disappeared. But yeah, that was interesting.
I hope. Okay. Okay.
Is our time up?
No. It's just, I don't know what happened. It just my thing crashed. Okay, it's recording. So I guess I missed. No,
it's just really reiterating the fact that we do have the power to create, and once we realize we do have the power, and we're actually a battery of actually recreating a reality, not only singularly, but we're co-creating. When we know that we have the power, then we start utilizing that power and becoming more fearless, and then just focusing on what we want instead of what we don't want, and then start creating what we want and what we would like to believe. Then we can eradicate the parasites, and they can dwindle away and lose more and more power until they just disappear. But we can't give them power by feeling powerless and allowing them to take control. So it's really, I mean, even if we wanted to use a metaphor that people could understand, if you were born and raised to be a victim, until you get out of that victim consciousness and learn how to deal with that aspect, you won't be able to overcome. But once you understand how, and learn how that works, like in codependency even, once we learn how that operates, we can take back control by knowing what to do on the inside on a singular level, and then expanding that out in our relationships and our communities. And that's really where to start, is right here in the heart.
Great. Thank you so much, Eve and Lauda. You were saying something when I got cut off. What is your final word for this?
It aligns with what Evie's saying, and ultimately we need, for us to really take on the mantle of the creators that we are, we also need to be really in charge of our spirit-heart connection, as we have to be careful what we wish for, essentially. We have to create out of the most benevolent evolution. So we need to center the most and the highest potential that is beneficial for all life, and we have to do so consciously and responsibly. And the ego and the mind need to take a back seat to the true high spirit task in this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies, for these words of wisdom and all your great experiences and methods and techniques and everything you've brought to our listeners tonight. And we wish you the best for the months and years to come. And I hope to see you again on the show or so.
Okay.
And
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty.
It's been a pleasure.
and long life to our spirit and heart connection for the righteous mind. like-minded people that will help each other in these
Yes,
tough days ahead.
definitely.
Good luck to all, and have a nice summer. We'll see you sometime in September. I don't know when. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.